No different than not even 24 hours ago when I gave you guys one word to describe the latest slate for the New York Mets and what is now a 3 for 13 slide, a horrendous stretch of baseball. One word to properly describe this is pathetic. And yet again, to begin this ball game, the Mets have batting practice, aka Frankie Montas, towing the rubber here for his second start of the season. And lo and behold, it's not Frankie Montas getting rocked against the Atlanta Braves. Instead, he somehow, some way goes 5 shutty while the Mets waste away that pitching masterclass. We fast forward not even a week later, he toes the rubber in Pittsburgh, and all the Mets are praying and dying for is a stopper. Someone that can come in, give them some type of stability whatsoever, and then go from there. Obviously, the bats have to do their part, but pitching-wise, can we please get someone to lessen the blow at least a little bit? And instead, Frankie Montas, his batting practice, gives up 6 earned runs over a 2-inning span, and all he can do is laugh at this point, because we have reached absolutely panic territory this season. And it pains me to say that, because while I know that this season is by all means not over, so let me make this clear. This reaction, this breakdown, this vent session, a lot to get into in today's post-game show presented by our amazing sponsors at BetUS, Mumu, SeatGeek, Mando, and all the other amazing people in here. But before we get to all your comments and everything, everybody, we have to make sure that we have not only the current reaction, but with the long-term point of view. And I want to hear from you guys plenty in the live chat and in the comments down below. One, what is your panic level right now on a scale 1 to 10? Where are you on the True Mets panic meter? And secondly, what is your confidence level in the Mets getting out of this? How can they get out of this? How do you anticipate them to get out of this? Because after Frankie Montas rolls over and dies in the first 2 innings of this ball game, so does this New York Metropolitan offense. Of course, and I will say this, while this Mets woes have certainly been in hand with the runner and scoring position issues that has been haunting them since the start of this season, there is no denying that. Anyone that tells you otherwise has not been watching these ball games consistently. But what is also true is that this Mets pitching has also become such a liability now that you can only fault the offense so much on every given night if you're not even having a starter go beyond 2, 3, 4, tops 5 innings over the past 2 weeks. It is now 12 consecutive starts in which the Mets have not had a starter go beyond 5 innings. Frankie Montas batting practice, that's another thing as well. It doesn't make things any easier whatsoever when your starter gets rocked early and you're dealing with such an early deficit. Folks, we have so much to get into in our latest post-game show here. Thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe on your way in. I really appreciate that. And yes, I don't disagree. This Mets team absolutely has pitching issues right now, and the June swoon is in full effect. This is something that we were hoping wouldn't become a reality. This is something that we said to ourselves as fans, please don't let this be the new thing, but sadly we are here. We need a new gimmick for this year, Seamus says, and I don't even know what to do. I don't know what the Mets need to do here, because obviously the immediate reaction is the Mets need to get their reinforcements and Sean Manaea and eventually their Kodai Senga and guys like Jesse Winker, who started his rehab today that we saw, and Brooks Raley out of the bullpen. But mind you, there's still a little bit away, each of these players, and the Mets are in such a rut right now. And this is what I told you guys in our Big Mets Updates video that dropped earlier today. Make sure to check it out should you guys have interest to do so, as we broke down Mitch Keller, the trade potential there, who is the likely pick between Nolan McLean, Jonathan, and Brandon Sproat, and why as that next Mets call-up, why it hasn't happened yet, and everything in between. So make sure to check that out, guys. But getting back into this one, everybody, like I said, we have a lot to get into. And not only am I pissed off by the fact that the Mets managed to get swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates out of all teams when the Pirates entered the series as an absolutely god-awful team when it came to the offensive end at minimum. The Pirates were a bottom feeder in baseball collectively. I believe that they were at minimum ranked 28th in all-team offense. Yet you mean to tell me that the same Pittsburgh Pirates that can't score more than 2 runs on average per game this season can somehow, some way put up how many runs against the New York Mets? They put up 9 in game 1, 9 in game 2, and 12 here in game 3. Let's do the math. If again, let's see, 18, 19, 20, 30 runs. Is that really how many runs the Mets gave up in this 3-game span? If so, the Mets were outscored here 30, and they scored 1 today. They had how many yesterday? What was it, like 2? I don't even remember, because that's how much I can care less about this series, because every single time the New York Mets go to Pittsburgh, things go to die. Whether it's the team itself, whether it's certain players with injury, it is always something of the sort here, at least in recent memory. We saw the Mets scored 1 run in game 1, 2 runs yesterday, and 1 run today. They were outscored 30 to effing 4 in this series. That is not only inexcusable, that is not only pathetic, but miss me with the nonsense of all the endless excuses as to how we got here. Oh, the Mets have all these injuries. I understand that, but this was a perfect storm. And the perfect storm is something that we called out from the early start of the season that continues to become a greater problem with the runner in scoring position woes. Now you add in the fact that the Mets went from having the best pitching staff in all Major League Baseball collectively, mind you, collectively, not just like, oh, it was just the rotation, it was just a bullpen. Collectively, they were absolutely nails for such a long period of the season. But now this Mets pitching staff is not only a liability, but we will be lucky if we can get a starter to give us 5 innings of 3 earned runs or less right now, given how bad the past plus week has been, including the series here against the Pirates. And this is after, mind you, the Mets still won those games against the Braves to split the series, but they weren't too inspiring of victories. You still clearly saw the flaws with this team. And while, yes, this is not something that changes overnight, it does kind of drive me up a wall as well, how the Mets seem to be making a bit of a joke out of all the Eric Chavez talk about if Eric Chavez, Mets hitting coach, along with Jeremy Barnes, should in fact be parted with. We saw Eric Chavez go as far as to actually quote what we saw on Instagram, on his Instagram post there for his daily reels, on quoting some guys, including Easy, who I know is a follower of mine, on talking so much down on Eric Chavez, and Chavez offered to give him hitting lessons. Chavez, that's great, Eric, but let's reel in, let's focus back on this Mets team and how they're currently free falling, and whether or not you are you're not the sole culprit. You are not the main culprit, but you are a factor, and the Mets need to do something here. And the problem that you have been this continued issue that we have seen collectively, where when the Mets go down offensively, they go down in unison in large part. And when they also go down, we have seen this be a large problem with the drastic splits home to away. That should not be to this significance either. And again, I know it's more than just the coaching staff. It has everything to do with the players. But at the same exact time, the way that this is being joked about, when these woes have been so apparent, when no championship winning team ever puts up this consistently horrendous numbers of runners in scoring position, something needs to be changed. And don't worry, when it comes to Jeremy Hefner, and I'm not going to give too much flack there, because Hef, in the case of his situation, again, you're dealt what you're given, right? And he helped get the best out of Griffin Canning, get the best out of Clay Holmes in many ways this season, among others. You're not going to be perfect every single time in the case of Hefner, nor is the staff going to be perfect, especially when you're getting the best out of guys and you're having them exceed expectations. When they come down from expectations, that's where you can fall this more on, to a degree, David Stearns and the decision that he makes, because he's the one that go out of his way to make more of maybe these smaller signings versus going after big splashes in certain areas, because he has the confidence in the Mets rotating the door of rotation pieces in the back end at minimum, as well as everything in their bullpen. And I agree with that philosophy to a degree, but not when we have such a large issue that the Mets currently find themselves on, so much so that it really does appear that the Mets rather just to do nothing more than a roll over, lay out, and die up until the All-Star break happens, and then they can get rejuvenated and hopefully revamp here in the second half. While that's all well, the problem is it's not all well. The problem is that you have more games to be had until the All-Star break. The problem is that we're still days away from the All-Star break. So why are we going to go out of our way to have another 2 weeks of horrendous baseball just because we're deciding to roll over and die after we face early deficit? As much as this is on the pitching, so much as of late, and I 100% agree with everybody here, this is also plenty on the offense. This offense has certainly been able to get over these early humps in the past, but certainly not what we have seen this season when it comes to not only being down after the first month or so, but especially with runners in scoring position on the consistency front. It just hasn't been there. They had a couple big hits against the Braves, which was encouraging. I love that, but that's all she had to write over the past 2 weeks entirely, everybody. Juan, thank you so much for the donation. We got a bunch of donations too here, everybody, so let's go ahead and address some of those quick. Thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe on as you chime in for our latest New York Metropolitan post-game show. We have a lot to get into in this one, as I just mentioned, and we're going to have a lot more to get into, not only answering your comments, questions, and concerns, but getting into what is next for this Mets team now after getting swept here against the Pittsburgh Pirates. How can they remedy this? How bad are their offensive numbers right now? Truly, we're going to deep dive the numbers here on the pitching and offensive end to give you guys greater context behind their woes as of late, and then we're going to go on from there, everybody. But before we do all that, let's just hear a quick word from today's amazing sponsor in the platform. Hey Mets fans, if you love diving deep into the numbers like WAR or ERA, then you absolutely are going to love what today's video sponsor Moo brings to your investing game. Think Moneyball, but this time for your portfolio. I'm beyond excited to share that Moomoo, the proud trading platform of the New York Mets, is here to level up your investing. Moomoo is a global trading platform currently serving over 25 million users in markets like the United States, Canada, Singapore, and Japan. Whether you're just starting out or if you're a more seasoned trader, Moomoo's app and desktop platform offers commission-free trading on stocks, ETFs, and options, no contract fees either. So plus, you get premium tools, guys, whether it's going to be the institutional grade analytics, Morningstar research, and analyst ratings, all free for funded users. And right now, Moomoo is doubling down for Mets fans. Sign up through my exclusive link down below, make a qualifying deposit, and get up to, yes, 60 free stocks, plus not one but two Mets Suite tickets. Not to mention, Moomoo customers can get free tickets to all Monday home games at Citi Field, and who knows, you may even see me at a game. And with zero commissions and zero contract fees on stock and ETF options, you keep more of your wins. Are you guys ready to trade smarter? Download Moomoo now and swing for the financial fences. And shout out once more to Moomoo for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. All right, guys, shout out to Emmanuel with the $2 holla. They say call prospects, trade, a change is needed. And I wholeheartedly agree, to trade is needed. A call-up is needed. The Mets not only need to trade for players, but it's really hard to do that, again, when the market isn't in your favor right now. That is what stings right now. The Mets can go ahead and trade for teams, even teams like the Pirates that are not going anywhere playoff-wise this season. But the problem is that you're going to have to pay a premium right now, more than likely, in doing so. The Rafael Devers, for, a bag of baseballs does not come falling off trees the way that the San Francisco Giants and Buster Posey luckily found themselves stumbling into. In the case of the Mets here, they're not going to have many quality options yet, and that's a problem, and that goes in direct hand because a lot of times a lot of teams have not fully committed to buying or selling leading up to the deadline, though. But again, I see what you're saying, and I 100% agree. Moves need to be had, absolutely. And especially when it comes to calling up kids, why not consider one of Jonathan, Noel McLean, or Brandon Sproat? As we broke down our video that dropped earlier today, make sure to check it out after watching this one, guys. I'm here to tell you that at minimum, one of those guys surely can get something done. Maybe even if they're going to be a little bit of batting practice, they might get in a groove after a couple starts. This is one of those things where the Mets need to consider other options because everything that they're doing right now simply is not working. There's nothing in unison. It's very fitting that Frankie Montas' season debut is just like Paul Blackburn, where he's nails. Blackburn goes 5 shutty or so against the Dodgers. We see Frankie Montas go 5 shutty against the Braves. Now, Blackburn's been batting practice since. While there's context involved there, it still holds true. And the case of the Mets here now and Frankie Montas, he becomes batting practice himself, and color me shocked. This tends to happen again for a guy that obviously has a lot of work to do and getting ramped up still this season, getting a groove under his belt. Just very discouraging and very frustrating to watch this team right now, and I would say that it's an understatement. That's why the panic level right now, my concern level was at a 3 or 4 like a week or so ago. Now I told you guys it was like a 6, 5 days ago or so. Right now we're panic level, we're looming between 6 and 7. My panic isn't at the point of like, oh my gosh, I think the season is absolutely fallen. We are not going back. This is the start of the end. We're never going to get on a winning streak. I don't think we're there, but I think if the Mets continue their ways the way that they are into the All-Star break, they're going to dig themselves into a hole that I'm not exactly confident they will be able to get out of to the same degree like they did last year. That magic can't just happen every single season, nor should you put yourself in that predicament in the first place, especially when the Mets started this stretch 21 effing games above 500. It's kind of a really difficult thing to do, to be this bad, this consistently bad for this long with this core group, with these pieces. But when you look at the pitching staff, it really isn't all that shocking paired with an offense that's been underwhelming. That is why we're pinpointing on Eric Chavez. It has a lot more to do with the offense not doing what they're supposed to do versus it is what Eric Chavez actually brings to the table. It has a lot more to do with the Mets just probably needing a better face and a change of scenery in that spot that'll actually give them a breath of fresh air from their current approach versus what they're currently getting. So this is not a big slide on Eric by any stretch. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I really enjoyed the hire when the Mets first brought him in, but this is not the same staff as Buck Showalter. And I think that's another problem that the Mets have found themselves in by having the Barneses and the Chavezes carry over from the Buck previous regime. They were here for a reason, and I understand that, but at the same time, I think at some point everything ages. The same way that Tom Thibodeau, whether Knicks fans agree with it or not, aged with his tenure with the Knicks here. Even though we got them to the ECF for the first time in basically 3 decades, it doesn't change the fact that the players collectively agree that they needed a different voice in the locker room. Now, I don't think the Mets collectively think that Chavez is a bad hitting coach. I'm sure that most of it all would absolutely go to bat for him. It's not so much about that, but versus what is best for the team, putting emotions aside. And for all those reasons, the Mets should find themselves making a change that they still don't find themselves doing. And that's why a lot of us, including myself, find ourselves frustrated. Because when the Mets hit, when they have been hitting, it has not been nearly as consistent with hitting when it matters most in clutch situations that you will need in key playoff moments especially. Instead, they're dying with the lawn ball. They're living and dying with it. And the more that they live and die with the lawn ball, the more that they're going to look like a team like the Yankees that'll have major flaws throughout the course of the regular season. I'm talking about the Yankees from last season specifically, having major flaws throughout the course of the year, but you still steamroll throughout the season because you handle lesser competition in the American League. And for the Mets, while they have things more difficult in the National League, what is also true is that the Mets can absolutely still find themselves in postseason play this year. I firmly believe the Mets are going to find themselves in that category, but then they're going to get exposed. And you want to know how they're going to get exposed? They're going to get exposed by teams that know exactly what the playbook has been on them all season long, that we, for whatever reason, decide to tie our hands behind our back and do absolutely nothing about it. So that is where my frustration level starts to kick into, because I don't want to see that become a reality. It's a slippery slope, but you can certainly get there if you do not make the proper adjustments from now up until the deadline, a calendar month away. Juan Diaz with a $5 haul. We get what we paid for. This is all on Stern, signing bums like Montas and Lovelady and letting the kids play too much, and moves aren't made. Peace. And again, I don't completely disagree with you. Listen, if Montas doesn't have it this year, it not only goes in hand with the injury, but it goes in hand with the risk that the Mets took in signing him to the $34 million deal. I like David Stearns a lot. He really impressed last year, but now we're seeing obviously a lot of early decisions not go in his favor the way that we hoped. We're seeing a team that went from initially felt like it was overperforming on the pitching end, but right about where you expected, if not actually underwhelming on the offensive end, to now the pitching's been exposed due to injuries and the offense is getting more and more exposed and it doesn't have the pitching to defend it anymore. So that's naturally where we're going to start to point blame at everything else outside of the players themselves. It's a collective effort here in the lack of winning for this team. David Stearns, I do not think is a large problem, but I completely agree with you guys that especially depending on what David does or doesn't do rather by this year's deadline, if this is a deadline the same as last year, if this is a deadline eerily similar to Billy Epler where it was a whole lot of flash in the pan nonsense, if that is a continuation, if the Mets do not make a splash of significance for this club that really rounds them out in certain areas, then I will be the first to call out David, just like each and every one of you, because the same way that I appreciate when things are going right in Mets land is the same way that I don't appreciate when things go wrong, especially when fans call it out from miles and miles away, and yet the organization doesn't do anything about it. I'm not saying the Mets are that team, but what I am saying is that when you drop this amount of games, 13 of your past 16, there's a continued trend. And normally, as David Stearns, who not proudly, but confidently said a couple weeks ago in a pregame presser that 1 week of baseball is a really, really long time. And the Mets need to be very strategic about their decisions. Well, David, it's 2+ weeks now. We have 3 wins under our belt. You're out of first place. And while that's not sky falling, because I think the Mets can still get back there, not relatively easily, but at the same time, kind of relatively easily. That all changes, though, with the way that this team continues to absolutely free fall to their actual demise at the moment. Sure, no great member. Every Mets team but Major League is built to win. Thank you so much for being in here, my man. I appreciate that. As we continue on here in the chat, everybody, I'm trying to get to as many comments as I can. I also apologize if I miss anyone's donations. It is not personal, just because the donors get cut off at a certain time, but I'm going to try to get to them. KCB, not going to rant about the Mets, not worth it till front office makes some changes. So instead, let's talk about Alvy's good day in Syracuse. And Alvarez did have a great day in Syracuse. That is absolutely correct. Alvarez, for those that don't know, hit himself another home run today after hitting a bomb yesterday. So that did in fact happen. Yes, that is true. Thank you so much for that donation. As we go up here, because I know that we had a bunch more from earlier, guys. Again, trying to get caught up here in the chat. Anthony Viola with the $10 haul. Can't wait to see the Stearns presser when we head back home. Even Steve might get involved. Thought we weren't worried with our amazing depth. Depth my butt. Yeah, it's not looking good right now. I got to be honest with you. The depth is getting absolutely exposed in large part because of the injuries. You're not wrong. And I do know that we had some other donations, so let me try to get to those, guys. Give me 1 second, everybody, and then we will go on from there. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Where are they? I could have sworn there was like at least one or two more. If I miss anyone's donations, I sincerely apologize. Please just relay it to me in the chat again, guys, and I'll happily answer. The problem is that when I go on my rants and when I go on my breakdowns for a good portion of time, and then I don't see the chat right away, I might not get to a donation right away. So if you guys did donate, please just say, that you donated and this was a question that you had, and I'll get to that ASAP, everybody. But I'm not here to give you guys a normal breakdown like we typically do when it comes to the Mets losing ball games. This is not your standard post-game show. This is a true vent session. This is truly laying things out, and this is truly exposing what has been large problems for this team over the past number of weeks now, everybody. And I'm going to relay some numbers, you guys, that you're not going to be happy to hear, but at the same time, you need to hear it. And mind you, these numbers I'm about to relay are also probably off by a day, because I'm going to be relaying this per Fangraphs. They're a little bit slower, but the same applies. I promise you, one day will not make a difference. The only difference it makes is that the numbers are even worse than what they were yesterday for this Mets team. But when we take a look at the Mets batting numbers currently this season, specifically over the past 16 games. So let's just really go back to not July. Let's go back to June 12th, June 13th area. Really, since the downfall with Kodai Senga going down with injury, among others. Since that stretch, let me tell you guys just how bad this Mets team has been offensively. Buckle up. Get ready for this, everybody. You're not going to be encouraged. You're going to be discouraged, and that's going to be an understatement, but it's also going to validate what you've been seeing. And knowing that you're not going crazy, you're not a psycho. You might be a psycho for watching the Mets nightly when they've dropped 13 to 16 games, but you're just a diehard fan that wants to see your team win. And right now, sadly, the boys are doing anything but winning right now. Let's take it all the way back there. Let's begin on June 12th, and let's go to present day today, and let's take a look, everybody. The Mets offensively are ranked 22nd in Major League Baseball over this stretch, including a 92 WRC plus. And mind you, this is prior to today's loss, so I'm sure it's dropped to even 90. I'm sure it's dropping even lower. They're a negative 6.4 as of yesterday on the offensive end. They're a negative 1 defensively there on the Fangraphs rating as well. They're at a 1.2 WAR, which I'm sure dropped to just a 1 WAR after today's very deflating, very disgusting 12-1 defeat here by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Mets here over this stretch have just been absolutely abysmal with their offense. Entering today, a 230 average, a 294 on base, and a 381 collectively as an offensive group. That's amongst the worst in the game right now. Then you add in the fact that if we just take a look on their grade, on their rating alone here, everybody, let's take a look here on their WRC plus. Is it the same as 22nd? Is it higher or is it lower? Yep, still the same there at 92. So yeah, the Mets have been a bottom 10 team offensively in Major League Baseball. The only other teams that they've been in the same category of over this 2+ week stretch have been the Cleveland Guardians, bottom feeder at 30, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are at 29 and probably 28 now after scoring 12 effing runs today, the Chicago White Sox, the Boston Red Sox, who obviously after trading Devers have been on a downward spiral, the New York Yankees, because they played horrendous baseball the past 2 weeks. The Yankees and the Mets just love to be in unison with both thriving and both dying all at the same time. The Oakland now turned Sacramento, then maybe eventually Vegas A's. They are there at 24. I know that Sevy certainly wants to get out of there. We're going to have a lot to say about that in future content. Be on the lookout for it, everybody. But you see there Colorado at 23 and the Mets at 22. The Atlanta Braves are 21. The Giants are at 20, and the Giants have completely free fall with their offense as of late, and that's been huge. A big demise for them when, mind you, the San Francisco Giants are a team right now that's currently in a position where they are absolutely trying to find themselves in the win category. They're trying to get back into postseason play, and they were a team that was high flying big time, but now they're having similar woes to the Mets on the offensive end. The Atlanta Braves have been having these woes kind of all year long, so this is as shocking. But in the case of the Mets here, this has been a continuation. That's just the offense, everybody. So reminder, the Mets 22nd in all Major League Baseball and total team offense over the past 2+ weeks. 2+ weeks. Okay, so bottom feeder there. Perfect storm when you take a look at the pitching, it's really bad. And mind you, this is entering today. Entering today, the Mets are ranked 19th in pitching. I'm sure it's dropped now to the bottom 10. It has to drop to the bottom 10 after you give up 12 runs today. There's no way it doesn't. The Mets had a K per 9 at 7.9, a walks per 9 at roughly a 5, horrendous, a home run rate entering today at 0.8, and a ERA at 5.71. That ERA at 5.71 is good for what? Oh yeah, that team ERA is good for, yeah, we're looking bottom feeder in baseball, folks. Third from last, I should say, only trailing the Washington Nationals and the Minnesota Twins here for third worst ERA in baseball over this 2+ week stretch, and collectively they've just been horrendous. And I understand the context behind why they're struggling pitching wise is different than the offense. The offense isn't as much to do with health, with the exception of Yentos. Even though Mark obviously didn't do a whole lot before his injury, he's not doing anything yet since returning his first couple of games, so I'm not going to use him as a key X factor. Alvarez, wasn't lighting the world on fire last year as is, so his downfall so far this season isn't one of those things where it's like an absolute game changer for the offense. But when you take a look at, the young pieces, the carousel of the pieces, that obviously has been an up and a down with the lack of consistency. You're having some great games with Beatty and Ronnie, and then you get absolutely nothing. And then on the catching end, up until today, Torrens has been horrendous over this 2-week stretch. That has also not helped anything whatsoever. You looked at Alonso, you look at Lindor. These guys on the road especially have not been able to hit it consistently to save their life, especially Lindor, who continues to underwhelm big time on the road this season. That too needs to change big time as a captain, the leader of this group. Juan Soto has been absolutely tremendous with the bat, but Juan Soto again today taking strike threes right down the pipe, having very uninspiring at bats or runners in scoring position, and Juan Soto has been horrendous in that stretch. Juan Soto, I believe, is at least 3 for his last 30 or so with runners in scoring position. That's not going to get the job done either. So while Soto has been fantastic on the end of the Mets as a collective group, while they have not performed well, he himself has had arguably the best performance that we have seen in all of Mets team history there in one singular month. While that is true in itself, what is also true is that when you don't hit a lick with runners in scoring position and the Mets go down the way that they do, that's a problem. And then you add the greater problem, that is, how much can you actually blame the Mets for their lack of hitting with runners in scoring position lately when every single pitcher has been getting rocked, every single key reliever has been getting rocked, or when you do get a masterclass on the pitching end from the Brandon Waddell's going 3 shutty yesterday, from many others, then it gets blown up because of course it does. Oscar Brosman can't get a single out, among other things. There are just so many things in flux at the perfect time for a perfect storm. This was the exact concern I had. This is exactly why when I saw Kodai Senga go down with his injury, I said to myself, please don't let this be the demise of this team early. When I asked you guys on X entering the 10-game gauntlet between the rivals in the Atlanta Braves for 2 series and the Phillies once, I had some pessimistic fans in my comments saying, listen, I firmly believe the Mets are going to go either 0-10 or they're not going to win more than 2 games. And for the people that were pretty much right and spot on with that, it's a shame because I know some of you guys said that just as an internal pessimist doing your best Frank the Tank reaction impression because you're never happy when the Mets win. You never yap, you never open your mouth when they perform well because you're more of a fair weather fan. At least you act in that manner when you only react in certain nature to certain things, but I will leave that tangent for another day, everybody. Point I'm trying to make here is that this Mets team has a problem, and whether it's Frankie Montas getting rocked today here after he looked stellar in his first start, and then the Mets have nothing to build off of because of course you are absolutely deflated when your team's shitting the bed to begin a ball game, and this is exactly why guys like Luis Robert, I firmly believe, will be better elsewhere, because how can you be inspired to play baseball on an every given day basis when your team is so effing horrendous and they're losing on an everyday basis? When the Mets have dropped almost every single game for the past 2 weeks, color me shocked the offense is sporadic as well, especially after they're down early. It's almost like that'll be a complete demise for an offense that already has major issues when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position, clutching up late in close situations all season long. This is why we continue to call out Chavez. This is why we continue to call out something to change on the roster front. And when I say change, I can only handle, the Justin Hagemans, the Love Ladies, I don't even know, all the call-ups that we're doing, the ones I have to break down every single day to talk about today in our latest Big Mets Update segment. The Mets caught up, blank, 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 blank. They get rocked, they get sent right back down, bang, bang, boom. You hate when you see the writing on the wall. The same thing when Tyler Zuber got caught up. Not a personal slight at all on Zuber, but when he got caught up, I know he's going to get rocked. You all knew he was going to get rocked. And you saw it from a mile away because he has not had a consistent season at all in the minor leagues. He was doing better as of late, but that's in AAA. And the Mets, when they call up these guys, the likelihood of them performing well beyond 1 inning or so has just been so swing and miss, and it's been far more missing than it has been anything else, guys. The Mets have not been able to hit on the way that they hit with Reed Garrett and Dino Nunez last year. That's a fact. And that is something that they're trying to figure out more internally this season with their bullpen. but it ain't working. That's another big part of the problem. They did not get the early success that they are getting right now with in-house options that especially have either been here for a couple years, among other things. So more of not only the David Stearns pickups have failed to a degree, and not everyone, some of them, not everyone. I'm just emphasizing some of them, including Jesus Cabrera that they dropped, obviously, including multiple others over this stretch. Colin Poche, they call up just for a second to DFA. I understood that was a much smaller move, but that goes in hand with the point. When these are constantly small moves that this Mets team makes on the pitching front, you can't expect to get quality out of what has been nothing more than just a quantity thrown at you. You know, this is not something that is going to be sustainable. And while it seems like the Brewers have been able to do this in years past, which is how I know David Stearns helped build his philosophy this way, and I see the vision with David. I don't think he's completely out of line for doing what he's doing. And while these stretches are expected, I can tell you right now that David Stearns is the first to tell you how disgruntled and unhappy he is at the moment. Because I'm sure that this is even a greater stretch of a lack of performance than what he was initially anticipating or projecting, rather. So that's why the Mets are going to be diligent in making moves. And I do have a level of confidence in David Stearns that he will make smart and savvy moves leading up to the deadline. Because, folks, let's be frank, if he doesn't, that too is something that Steve Cohen has to look at and reevaluate. How does he feel about who's running the show here? And I know that's a crazy remark to say, but hear me out. This Mets team is in a core group of Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. They're not getting any younger, with the exception of Soto because he's still in his 20s. Everyone else is already there around the age of 30 or older. And the more that the Mets wait, the more that the Mets swing and miss with trying to hit with this core group, the more that they are either going to have to break down some of this core group entirely and then kind of retool, reevaluate from there, or they're going to need to continue to build around said core group the way that they're failing to get the current success out of. How much is it on the core right now? How much is it on Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, the guys who have been here more long term? It's the prospects who have been here but haven't fully balanced and blossomed yet. How much is it on what has been here versus what has changed since David Stearns has entered the fold? And what I have to say about that is not only has this team been underwhelming and having a lack of proper production for how good their team is, I think on paper, offensively, pitching wise, far exceeded expectations at times, no denying that. But offensively, there is a woe. What can David Stearns do to change that woe? What is David Stearns going to be able to do to prove to us within the next calendar month leading up to the MLB trade deadline? Because if he sits on his hands, if he just adds, a decent reliever, a solid lefty reliever, but one is more of a soft tosser, so he's not going to probably handle high leverage dominant roles too much in postseason play, which is a major problem. That's why I've been advocating so heavily for a guy like Aroldis Chapman, who David Stearns tried to sign before the 2024 season began with the Mets. That is good connection right there, which has me somewhat hopeful of it becoming a reality. Then you think of, okay, outside of pitching, when it comes to offense, what can the Mets do? How much production are you going to get out of a guy there and say a Cedric Mullins and say a Jarren Duran, right? And shout out as well to our other amazing sponsor that many of you guys know at BetUS that has you covered all of your sports betting needs. This was a seamless plug here, is when we talk about not only picks, odds, lines, you name it with BetUS, guys. Head over to them, check them out, betus.com.tv today. Utilize a promo code here at YouTube150. That way you two get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you guys want to bet on. But folks, you guys see here, Luis Robert here. You have Mr. Aroldis Chapman and Cedric Mullins. I would love Chapman, obviously. Robert, I think, is a change of scenery away from being a productive player again, but I can see why a Mets fan says, hey, let's maybe not bring in a guy that doesn't even have a Mendoza on the batting average. I don't fault you there. I can't say that you're completely wrong, especially when the Mets have serious woes right now to a degree in certain areas. Cedric Mullins, I like a lot, Ceddy. I think he does have production. I think he would be a plus for this team, but I don't know if that's enough. That's another part of the problem, because how much are you going to get out of Brett Beatty? How much are you going to get out of Mark Vientos? How much are you going to get out of Ronnie Mauricio? These are the pieces, and the more that the youngsters are question marks, the more it completely throws in flux what the Mets should or shouldn't do at this year's MLB trade deadline. And the last thing that I would want to see David Stearns and this Mets team do is sit on their hands for making a proper move offensively and on the pitching end, because they were betting too much on their in-house options that, color me shocked, were not able to move the needle enough to get beyond what is still a playoff team, but is not a championship winning team. That is why we're ranting the way that we are right now. And that's why so many of you guys are watching this live on a replay as we break down the latest frustration and Mets land together, as the Mets dropped this one 12-1, swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they have now dropped 13 other past 16 games. And Matt, I will be talking about that actually, because in the case of Severino, his stats are a lot more flawed than you think. At home, he's been horrendous. That's exactly why the A's want nothing to do with him. On the road, he's been amongst the best in baseball. So again, we're going to talk more about Severino. Don't you guys worry. We're just not doing that right now. While we can expand, I actually apologize, everybody. I didn't mean to move the slide, but for a second, everybody, just to give you guys a sneak peek what the playoff status is for this Mets team right now. Yeah, it's not great. Currently, the Mets are now second in the wild card. They are just 11 games above 500. They have lost a full 10 games. 10 effing games they have lost in the standings over the past 2+ weeks. Over the past 15 to 16 days, the Mets have lost 10 games in ground. When we look at their victories, there were 21 games above 500 at the start of their demise here. They are now 48-37. The Milwaukee Brewers, who were not anywhere close to where they are now in a playoff spot a month ago, have now had the best calendar month of baseball. And oh yeah, the Brewers play the Mets next week. Whoop-de-effing-do, guys. And by the way, Blades Hidwell is scheduled to be slotted as a rotation start in that rotation for that series. So yeah, buckle up, everybody. Get ready for Jose Quintana to go 6 shutty and this Mets team to at minimum lose another 2 out of 3. And let's make matters worse. Are we home or are we away for this series in Milwaukee? Let's see the thing here, everybody, because this is another key factor. We are home. Okay, so that's at least a little bit better, but still not loving what the Mets have upcoming, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's really how it's feeling right now, as much as that pains me to say as a Mets fan, everybody. And in case you guys did not watch the game, and I apologize, Brandon Sprout, that was from our video earlier, did not mean to click on that. This is how the pitching fared today, everybody. If you want to see a whole lot of absolutely horrendous, Travis Jankowski was along the lines of the best pitcher today, because he and Danel Nunez had the worst best line of the day, going 1 inning of 2 earned run baseball. Nunez, I don't even care that he gave up runs today, because listen, the Mets were never coming back in this one. He just needed to be thrown out there because the Mets had to eat innings. Lovelady, horrendous, absolute batting practice. Thinking that Lovelady was at all going to be anything short of the demise of this team if it wasn't Frankie Montas giving up 6 over 4. I don't know what else it would be. Because Lovelady gave up a hit to everybody and their mother on the same day he signed back with the teams on a major league contract. Also on the same day that the Mets will be designating him for assignment, because there's not a chance in hell Lovelady will be on this team in this bullpen for Tuesday's start of their next series against the Brewers. I promise you guys that. If Lovelady is still in this bullpen on Tuesday, I'll be jaw dropped. Genuinely jaw dropped. And I'll rant about it a little bit just because I'll be like, what the hell are we doing here? We need to add a different arm. Offensively, whole lot of donuts. Where's Homer Simpson? He could eat these up, because I'm not eating this up. I'm looking at this, I'm pissed off. That's my initial reaction. My initial reaction is I'm pissed off not only because of the Mets not being able to hit a lick, but also the Mets not being able to hit a lick in a large part because they're pitching absolutely being their demise to begin this ball game. Today is not a day that I'm going to look at this offense and say to myself, oh, they were the complete demise, they were the major problem. The offense has been a collective issue for a number of weeks now. That is why we're having this conversation. But today specifically, no. When you're down by 6 runs in your first 2 innings, I can only put so much blame. The blame goes on all the other countless games where the Mets did get pitching, yet their offense couldn't hit a lick to save their life. It just is not happening. Whatsoever. It is not happening. Get Keller. I have to finish your earlier episode. Yeah, definitely check it out when you get a chance. I do like Mitch Keller. I think Mitch Keller is a perfectly fine middle of the rotation stopper for them right now to just keep things a bit more balanced. I like his contract. He won't cost you an arm and a leg to the same degree as some other key pitching talent that'll be available by the deadline. And the Pirates will absolutely be selling, because remember, guys, even though the Pittsburgh Pirates just outscored the New York Mets 30-4 in a 3-game set and swept their ass without a problem in Pittsburgh, they are still going to be sellers without hesitation by the deadline. Why? Because they're the Pirates and because they're not good. You see the problem? Good teams, let alone great teams, let alone championship-winning teams, do not go on stretches the way that the Mets are now on. It's one thing to go on a losing skid. It's another to now have consecutively dropped 13 of your past 16 games. Like, it really pains me to say that, because this stretch, I think we have to get to the point of making the argument. This stretch right now is, if not as bad as the Mets' worst stretch last year, when looking at a 2-week sample size, then it's awfully close to. Awfully close to. No, I don't see the Mets being sellers of the trade deadline. That if the Mets are sellers of the trade deadline, then, I mean, you're going to see things on this platform that are going to be really bad. Very uncharacteristic even for Wardy, who can get very unhinged and very out there when the Mets are not performing well. Let's just pray that isn't the case, okay? Everything would have to go wrong for a second consecutive month for that to be considered. But the problem is that everything's going wrong right now, and everything's been going wrong for over 2 weeks. So exactly how much more do we have to wait? Because another 2 weeks before the All-Star break, and bam, what does that mean, everybody? Oh yeah, that means the Mets have played a full month of baseball playing horrendously. If the Mets go another 2 weeks of playing like this, they are going to be not even in close to a wild card spot, because they're going to lose how many more games? If the Mets go on another stretch of dropping another 3 of 13, which again, 13 out of 16, which I don't think is going to happen. But the fact that they did that alone has put them in a significant hole where they don't have as much luxury as previously to find themselves where, you know what, we can sit back, we can roll over for a couple games. And I know they're not purposely doing it, but the more this happens, the more we have an issue, everybody. And offensively, collectively, this has just been, I can't tell you how much of a universal issue this has been for this team, which is what makes us all more frustrating. You wish that this was solely an issue with just the rotation, where you could say, oh, we just got an add-on arm or two, or just get a guy back and we'll be fine. But it's not that. That's the problem. Even with Sean Manaea coming back, and mind you, and he'll be having a rehab probably, and then that'll be that before returning to this Mets team after he had yet another setback, because Sean Manaea will need surgery this offseason for a loose spot in his elbow. Bear that in mind when you think of the Mets and the decisions that they made this past offseason on the pitching end. You have to wonder just how smart they were in the end, depending on what the demise will be for this club throughout the course of the season. But then you not only look on the pitching end, you look on the offensive end, and you look at maybe what the Mets were not getting enough out of the youngsters as well, paired with the core group being underwhelming. Again, that's why I continue to circle back to Mr. Eric Chavez here. And I know that I constantly am going in circles and laps when I'm breaking down today, but it's really hard not to when we have been calling these things out for so long on what has been a collective issue for this team. It's not just one thing. Let's see here. We do have Texas with the $5 holla. Thank you, Texas. Only thing left is for Pete to stand up and say, we got this, like he did in 2021 season in August, and we went to lose 13 to 16. I hope that isn't the case. I remember, like it was yesterday, when Alonso said we got this, because that was the most uninspiring we got this in Mets history. We broke that down on the platform, and I covered every single game from that point on when the Mets did in fact lose those 13 of 16 games. And I can tell you one thing right now, everybody, that stretch was so deflating, was so disheartening as a fan, but this stretch too is not all that much better. This stretch is absolutely horrendous what the Mets are doing right now, and the fact that they're still only a game and a half back of first. All it takes is the Mets to win their next series and the Phillies to get swept again, or something along those lines, and the Mets are right back in first place. That just shows you how insane the 162 is there for the course of the season, everybody. But I do want to give a quick shout out as well to all of our live members and recurring viewers. Thank you guys kindly for being in here. We got our guy Steve Law in the chat. How are we doing here? Steve, great member as always. We're going up the list here. We got Juan Diaz, great member. We got all you guys going up here even more. I just want to do it for a second. PB9, how are you? Ricardo, how are you? And if, again, guys, for all my live members, be on the lookout. We will be doing a members only live show tomorrow evening, probably right around 7 p.m. or so. Be on the lookout. I'll give you guys a full community tab announcement tomorrow. We will be doing a playback stream on the platform probably Wednesday, barring changes. So be on the lookout for that as well, everybody. And also be on the lookout as I will be having an extended segment coming out there with Dexter Henry of the New York Post, either later on today or early tomorrow on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel. And we'll be back live in the Bleacher Report app starting Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. But that will be coming to an end there after we're 2 weeks into July. We'll be going to more short form content and live stream content at the same time instead of just mainly live stream. Ricardo, great member. Alan, great member. Happy to have you in here. Going up the list here, guys. Let's see. Daniel Caps, great member. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's go up here even more. Let's see. All you guys again. Daniel Caps, thank you kindly again. Come one, come all. Appreciate you guys so much again. Thank you. RP, my guy Remy. Hope you're doing awesome. I know that this has not been great. For those that don't know, RP and I actually met at Citizens Bank Park when the Mets lost 10-2 there with Blade Tidwell towing the rubber in that game one loss against the Phillies. When Blade Tidwell wasn't really the problem that game, but it was everyone else and their mother between the pitching and the offense. Braves fan, I have the most trust in our team, more trust in our team than the Mets, but I think the Mets can make more moves at the trade deadline to get better than we can. That I agree with, but here's the problem though. The Mets have not done anything of significance at the trade deadline outside of Javi Baez with Zach Scott in 2021. Name me one single move the Mets have done of significant. I mean, you could add Jesse Winker in there. Jesse did have nice flashes for the Mets last year, but Jesse was not one of these guys that was going to be, you know, the decider between winning and losing ball games consistently. So outside of Jesse and Javi Baez, The Mets have nothing to show for it when it comes to positive contributions, really, at the MLB trade deadline over the past number of years. They literally have nothing. And the problem that I have with that is that if the Mets kind of roll over and have another stretch where they're underwhelming, where they just make the moves that they felt was the minimum to do at the deadline, then no one at all should be surprised if they fall short come postseason play, and no one at all should be shocked if Steve Cohen is frustrated and then we're pondering what the next steps are for this organization, because we're seeing the writing on the wall. Let's see. Baez was a terrible move. In hindsight, it was by giving up PCA. But for what Baez did with this team, you guys might have hated it, but Baez was a very productive player when he was here. He had right around a 300 average and 900 OPS. He was very productive. It actually had his best stretch of baseball that he's now having back with the Tigers again, but he hasn't been this good since that 2021 season when he was traded to the Mets. So that's me getting on a tangent here, everybody. There is no organization, I agree, and there is a lot of frustration. And the Mets haven't completely quit, Steven, but they quit in the sense that they don't know how to combat the early woes of their pitching right now. Because the Mets were really easy at being able to allow these things to be masked. It was very easy for this Mets team to go on the first couple months of the season by doing the bare minimum and properly adjusting the runner and scoring position woes, at least in the public eye. I know they're putting a lot of effort and a lot of grind in there in the batting cages on a daily basis. I've seen it myself. I know the effort they're putting in, but effort doesn't always equal results. And unfortunately right now for this Mets team, not only are they not equaling results, they have just been absolutely horrendous. So much so that we are now at a point as fans where we are dying. We are dying for changes on not only the trade end, but as well on the call-up end. You know, the Mets have some key pieces that they can consider there in the minor leagues. Will the Mets consider anyone offensively in the minor leagues outside of what they have so far? I can't see why they would. I feel like that they'd be rushing anyone else up at this point. But between Ronnie Mauricio, Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, something needs to give there. So it sucks to say, but the Mets kind of need some carry there. Because if they don't get carry there, we're going to have a problem. And will I be at the Subway Series? Yes, I will be at Saturday's game, July 5th, everybody, with Pat Hennessy. Yes, Unhinged Pat, that has been my buddy who's been on the platform that we've collabed together. I promise you, though, if the Mets get curb stomped for that game, I'm not letting Pat take over the stream. I'm not even letting him probably take part in it because we'll be so down bad that I can't even have, the half-joking Yankee fan come in, to try to rain on the parade. We can't even have that happen. D, yes, I don't know why you're talking about yourself so much, my friend. But as we continue on and hear everybody how the Mets fare when it came to runners in scoring position, they were 0 for 5 and they left 6 on base. Again, not my big issue here. My big issue is more so on the pitching than anything else. Frankie Montas did not locate well at all today, and Montas didn't have anything working at all today either. He was throwing meatballs galore, and he was able to get out some jams later on in the ball game after the Ronnie Mauricio error, because again, Ronnie has been having an error. It feels like every other game that he's been playing in the infield, that too is a problem. But then you see Frankie Montas, who worked out that jam, but that was after the Mets were already down 6 runs. So even though Frankie threw 7 different types of pitches today, 4-seam slider, splitty, sinker, sweeper, cutter, that's if I did the math properly. Maybe it's only 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 6, not 7. There you go. Fastball topped out 97. Didn't matter. It was batting practice down over a full mile per hour today. Slider, splitty, sinker, sweeper. What sucks so much, too, is that the Mets love the triple S's, as they tell you guys. They love pitchers that have arsenals of sinkers, sliders, splitties, sinkers. And for that to not even work and for it to become batting practice as bad as it was, that's a major problem. 5 through 9 of the bullpen. Somehow Pete is a problem with fanboyism. What are we talking about there on the Pete front? I'm a little confused. But pitching-wise, again, guys, this was the big demise for this Mets team today. Again, not loving what we're seeing whatsoever. Love Lady horrendous, but it's Sterling Montas. The Mets were never coming back after this point. And then when you look at what's ahead for this Mets team, everybody, too, that's where we get stressed as well. Because we broke down the numbers, but for those that are just chiming in, the Mets, pitching-wise, have been top 11 worst in baseball over the past 2.5 weeks. Mets offensively have been top 12, if not, top 8, if not now top 7, top 5 potentially after today's loss in offense over the past 2+ week stretch. It's truly been a collective effort where no one has been able to step up, especially when runners in scoring position woes, and that has been from everybody. And look at this stretch as well, guys. If you exclude the Atlanta Braves, okay, let's actually take a look at this let's deep dive this for a second, because I shouldn't just exclude the Braves series, because the Mets lost their series against the Rays. They were horrendous against the Tampa Bay Rays as well, and they never came back, and that was at home. So I can't even just use the road excuse to a degree, but I am going to break down for you guys as well just how bad some of these splits continue to be for this club, because like I said, they've been really, really bad. Let's just take a look here, everybody. The Mets currently have a 19-25 road record this season. But something is very important when we break down the road record here, okay? And it's as follows. The Mets lost game 1 3-1. 3-2. They won 3-1 the second one against Houston. Let me just do the quick math here. Let's look at over the past stretch of games specifically here. It's just been, the Mets have been out. It's not even close. They've been outscored so egregiously over the past 2 weeks, guys. It's actually disgusting. Like, it's really, really bad. Mets outscore. Like, I'm kind of jaw-dropped looking at these. Like, I know it's been bad. You gave up 30 runs to the Pirates. You gave up... You gave up 21 against the Braves. So we're at 51 runs in a 2-series span. 51 runs the Mets have given up over that span for the most part. 51. Then against the Phillies, you give up 21. So now we're at 72. 72 runs over the past 3 series the Mets have given up. If we go to the start of the Atlanta Braves series, where they were swept in Atlanta, oh my God. $89 runs. I'm probably off by like 2 or 3 because I can't count for shit, but 89 runs, roughly 90 runs the Mets have given up since the start of the Atlanta Braves series in Atlanta. And here's how many runs the Mets have scored over that time. Mind you, the number's 89. 89! We're not even talking about the Tampa Bay Rays series. We're not even talking about getting swept against Tampa. We're just talking about the rivalry stretch beginning against Atlanta, then against Philly, then back in Atlanta. 89 runs the Mets have given up over this stretch. The runs the Mets have scored themselves is as follows. They scored 5 runs in Atlanta. They scored 14 runs in Philadelphia. So doing the math right there, we have 18 total throughout the first 2 series. Or 19 total, I apologize. $35 runs through the Braves series, the 4-game set. And now here, 36, 37, 38, 39. The Mets were outscored 89-39, just about roughly, since the Atlanta Braves series. Oh my God. We're talking a 50-run differential. 50-run differential. I just pulled out the calculator, Garcia. That's why. The math wasn't mathing initially, but we got figured out. Yeah, major problems, everybody. Major problems. And for context, the Mets were a far more plus offensive team on the runs. And the craziest thing as well, even with the Mets down negative 50 runs since the start of that Atlanta Braves series, they are still a plus on the runs when you look at them right now in the MLB app and their standing, which is just insane to me. The Mets are still plus 39 on their run differential when they have been a negative 50 the past 2 weeks. That's crazy. That's insane. So that right there, everybody, is what you need to know. A perfect storm of the Mets getting no hitting whatsoever, no clutch hitting with runners in scoring position, nothing of that. As well as on the pitching end, your pitching staff collectively being amongst the worst in baseball right now. And, you know, just to go back to the pitching, everybody, because there are some things that definitely need to be highlighted. As a collective pitching staff, it's been brutal. The Mets have had the top 3 worst ERA in baseball since June 12th. But now let's take a look at their bullpen specifically. Not just the rotation, everybody. Just the Mets bullpen over this stretch of games. Let's see where they rank specifically. Mets bullpen since June 12th ranks out of all baseball teams 1 through 30 here on the following. I'm just trying to get this to load because the computer's going slow as a snail. Yep, they are 27th in baseball with a 6.13 ERA. A .4 WAR, which isn't the worst in baseball over this stretch by any stretch. It's actually, more relative, more around middle of the pack, but horrendous. Just, again, a 9.5 K per 9, a 3.67 walks per 9, but, oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong stats here. Okay, that makes more sense. An 8.22 K per 9, a 4.3 walks per 9, a .65 home run per 9. Mind you, this was entering today's game, so I promise you the Mets are probably top 2 worst over now this stretch of baseball because they just gave up 12 runs today, so it's even worse. That was entering today's game. As a rotation, before giving up the 6 runs that they gave up today, everybody, they were still really, really bad. And how bad were they, everybody? Well, let's take a look at just how bad they were. We will turn it around. I do think the Mets will turn it around, but my problem is, and the question that we're trying to find the answer to is, when are they going to turn it around? Does it really mean that we're going to have to wait until Shamanai is fully back healthy in this rotation, Kodai Senga, and basically shooting for the stars by the traded line? Because if we're that reliant on the traded line and things aren't fixed and flaws aren't fixed with this offense, then that's it, folks. Literally, that's all, folks. Cue the end of the show. Mets rotation, 27th as well. Wow. Both the bullpen and the rotation have been the same exact ranking per Fangraphs. Entering today's game, 7.6 K per 9, a 5 walks per 9, horrendous fight of the starting staff, a roughly home run per 9. They are a 5.3 ERA, only trailing the Chicago Cubs over this stretch, crazy enough, the Minnesota Twins and the Baltimore Orioles. So while, yes, this can still happen to good teams as well, as you see teams like the Cubs in that category too, the Cubs bullpen hasn't been as bad as the Mets over this stretch. I highly doubt that. I'm actually going to double check to make sure of that, so that way I don't sound crazy. The Chicago Cubs bullpen has been their stronghold over this stretch, as a matter of fact, as they've had a 3.32 ERA, but a .2 WAR. So it's kind of been, deceptive. They've had a lot of luck on their side, is what that's telling me based on the numbers right there. But yeah, folks, it's downright bad. You want to hear the numbers? Those are the numbers. I can continue to go through how Francisco Lindor's splits have just been horrendous as of late. I continue to go through how the Mets collectively 5 through 9 in their lineup has not been good at all. Did I like him as a player? Absolutely, Dane, for sure. I liked him initially when he was with the Mets. I hated him when he was with the Nationals. So, he actually was one of my least favorite players up until I got a chance to meet him, and we had him on the platform a couple years ago in a live show with my previous podcast. And shout out to Anthony Recker, who did a fantastic job on the radio call this weekend, what was just a horrendous weekend of baseball there for the Mets. But I hope you had a great time covering them with Keith Rad there on the radio. Recker, former co-host of mine, and Joe Serralo for our previous podcast. Many of you guys remember initially we were Believe in Queens, and then we moved that to what was it? What did we change it to? We changed it to why am I blanking so bad? So bad. Something Corner. It wasn't Kiner's Corner, but it was something along those lines. Queen's Corner, the Queen's Corner podcast. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let's see. My brother has maintained pitching as an issue. He said it at Christmas. I mean, pitching has been an issue, but it's both. It's both right now. No doubt about it. Because the pitching is what's now exposing what has been an offensive issue all game long, all season long. If you're seriously panicking, there's probably something wrong with you. If you're not panicking at all, there's probably something wrong with you. Yep. I agree. I 100% agree. I think everyone should be cognizant. I think everyone has a rightful reason to be concerned. Do I think that the Mets should be panicking to the point? I think as fans, should we be panicking to the point that the season is over? No. And that is what I disagree with. And that is what I will stand firm on. The reason why I stand firm on that is the following. You can't be a Mets fan more than just this season alone, who's watched the 2024 Mets, who's watched endless season of the Mets, and come to the conclusion that the Mets are not going to be able to either get themselves out of a rut or that you don't at least have an optimism level in them doing so. Because if the Mets can get themselves out of being 11 games below 500 a year ago, they can pretty much do anything. And they are not in nearly as much of a rut as they were last year in comparison. When you really view it, how down bad were they with the roster construction and everything else? The Mets did that last year without Juan Soto on their team. Just think of the potential of this team and their impact. They can just get consistency, if they can get health on the pitching end, and they can get things in a groove on the offensive end. And maybe that does mean looking for at least one more key bat to go and find yourself landing. Otherwise, Offensively, I think that they're going to have their woes. I think that they don't have enough internally to really get things right unless, hey, Mike is saying in the chat, bring back JD Martinez. What I would say as well is, if JD wants to be the hitting coach, be my guest. But the Texas Rangers did offer him a non-guaranteed contract as they're looking for him to basically be their hitting coach, as they're having massive hitting issues themselves this season, that being the Texas Rangers. I do believe the Mets turn this around, but the right moves need to be made in order for that to happen. And not only do the right moves need to be made, but something needs to be had sooner than later. Like, that's another thing that needs to be part of the puzzle here. Something needs to change, everybody. Excited? Are you happy about that? Happy about what exactly, Steve? Thank you so much for being in here, though. I appreciate it. But folks, we're going to continue our live portion of the show here, but this is where I'm going to cut things off for all of our replay viewers. Again, this was a big vent, rant session, everything in between. We had a lot of breakdown from the numbers, getting into what's next for this Mets team. Hopefully they can get back to winning ways, but be on the lookout again for our live show. That'll be members only tomorrow, this Monday in the evening, as well as a video dropping earlier in the day for you guys that's more trade related, among other things, and we have a lot more content coming. So to our live viewers, we're going to continue on the live show, but to our replay viewers, this is where we're cutting things off. Let's go, Mets.